Hi, I'm Tawny Plattis, and you're listening to Dirty Bits, the show that covers the sexy, scandalous, and salacious stories from history your teacher probably left out. We'd like to take just a second to welcome our newest love bugs to the show. Devin Panda, Kelsey T, Joseph J, Carla H, Korea S, Philip B, Rebecca L, Anna K, Trish G, Anita F, Jamie M, Barry W, Vanessa D, Grace Marie, Annie O, and to anyone whose little notification thingy I missed on Facebook, you are so welcome to our group. Be sure to join in on the Dirty Bits discussion on our Facebook page, facebook.com/dirtybitspodcast, and in our Facebook discussion group, the Dirty Bits Podcast Group, where we post art history memes and talk all things historically filthy. You can also connect with us on Instagram at Dirty Bits Podcast and Twitter at the Dirty Bits Pod. We love talking with our listeners, and we would be delighted if you joined in with us. You might even get a shout out on our next episode. All of our links are available in the show notes here and on our website, tawnyvoice.com/dirtybits. We've also joined with the Orbital Jigsaw Network, along with some other shows we think you'd like Concession Stand, a high-energy, fast-paced, one-hour weekly show full of quips, jokes, and updates on all things geektainment, centered around TV, movies, video games, and pop culture. Check it out at orbitaljigsaw.com. George and I originally thought this special two-parter science nonfiction dirty podcast feature show would run a little short. And boy, were we wrong. There is so much information available to research and spin into a show, it could have easily been twice this finished length you're about to enjoy. Many of you have, in fact, requested longer, bigger, more frequent episodes. We would absolutely love to bring the show to you full-time. And if that's something you would like to see, you can help us work towards making that a reality by visiting us at patreon.com/dirtybits and becoming an official Dirty Birdie. Every one of your contributions to the show means so much, especially to those who aren't able to donate, and George and I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. Stay tuned after the show to hear some promos from some other indie podcasters we're buddies with, and discover a new podcast for your playlist. Enjoy the show. Oh, Tesla. Tesla, Tesla, Tesla. Remembered by Elon Musk and 80s hairbands. The Serbian American is an interesting topic for the Dirty Bits podcast. The Serbian American inventor, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, physicist, and futurist was a complex character, to say the least. He's the third virgin we've covered on the show. Anthony Comstock was possibly a virgin, while Hans Christian Andersen almost certainly was. But Tesla actually was celibate all his 86 years of life, and not because of any internal battles like Hansi Andersen, but what seems to be by choice, so he could focus on his work. He was 6'2" and weighed 142 pounds. He lived in New York, was elegant, stylish, manscaped like a mofo, and was incredibly meticulous and regimented in his daily life. By all accounts, he had that tall, dark, and handsome thing going on, if you're into that. A newspaper editor, Arthur Brisbane, described him as almost the tallest, almost the thinnest, and certainly the most serious man who goes to Delmonico's regularly, and was described as having light eyes, very big hands, and remarkably big thumbs. He also fell in love with a pigeon. Nikola was a Serb, born in 1856 in what was the Austrian Empire at the time. His father was an Eastern Orthodox priest, and his mother Duka was also the daughter of a priest. Now, Duka was a cool lady. She made homecraft tools, mechanical appliances, and memorized epic Serbian poems, all without ever receiving a formal education. So anytime the source of Nikola's genius was referenced, he was always quick to say, "I got it from my mama." So little Nikola goes to school and is just blown away by these demonstrations his physics professor does in class with electricity. He said the mysterious phenomena made him want to know more of this wonderful force. He finished a 4-year term in 3 years, even though his teachers thought he was cheating because he was able to do integral calculus in his fucking head. So he graduates and just goes on to take names and kick ass. He gets cholera in 1873 when he's 17, and he keeps just almost dying. So his dad, who was peeved he hadn't gone into the priesthood, told him if he gets better, he'll send him to the best engineering school in the country. So naturally, Tesla is inspired back to health and enrolls in the Austrian Polytechnic on a military frontier scholarship. He never missed a single lecture, earned the equivalent of a 5.0 GPA, and passed 9 exams, which is about twice as much as he needed, in addition to starting a Serb cultural club, because, he was bored. The dean of the school sent Tesla's father a letter that said, "Your son is a star of first rank." He was a total workaholic, supposedly beginning his day at 3 a.m. and not calling it quits until 11 p.m. And he didn't take Sundays or holidays off. His teacher sent his dad letters saying that if he didn't pull him out from school, he was going to die from overwork. It was something that continued throughout his life. He would work daily from 9 to 6, leaving room for an exercise routine that consisted of walking 8 to 10 miles a day. He also curled his toes 100 times on each foot every night because it allegedly stimulated his brain cells. And who are we to argue with Nikola goddamn Tesla? He would eat dinner at exactly 8:10 at Delmonico's or the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. He'd telephone in his dinner order to the head waiter, who was the only one allowed to serve him. In his later years, he became a vegetarian, eating only milk, bread, honey, and vegetable juice. The waiter once said, the meal was required to be ready at 8 o'clock. He dined alone, except on the rare occasions when he would give a dinner to a group to meet his social obligations. Tesla would then resume his work, often until 3 a.m. But he seemed to crack in his second year of school, gambling away his tuition and allowance. So when exam time came around, he was like, "Oh shit, I don't know what the hell's going on. Can I get an extension?" And his teachers were like, no. So he didn't receive grades for his last semester and didn't actually graduate. And he's super embarrassed about dropping out, so he splits and ghosts everyone out of his life. And all of his friends are like, "I think Tesla drowned in the river, you guys." He would get sick constantly and said that he would sometimes see these blinding flashes of light, usually accompanied by visions. The visions would be linked to a word or idea he had, or provide the solution to some problem he had. He actually got a job with the Budapest Telephone Company after recovering from a breakdown, and then eventually worked with Edison's company, where he got all the practical experience in electrical engineering. But they supposedly were dicks to him and ripped him off, so he gave them the finger and slammed the door on his way out. He then went on to absolutely slay. He patented the induction motor and signed with General Electric. He made a grip of money licensing all his AC patents and was able to pursue his passions and pet projects. He worked out of a string of workshops and labs in Manhattan, where some of his most significant work would be conducted. The guy was disgustingly brilliant. He read like a fiend, memorizing entire books, and allegedly had a photographic memory. He'd hear the name of an item and could envision it in realistic, perfect detail. He would imagine it with such extreme precision, down to the dimensions before constructing it, in a method known as picture thinking. And he wouldn't make drawings, but worked entirely from memory. He spoke 8 languages, which is super sexy in and of itself, including Serbo-Croatian, Czech, English, French, German, Hungarian, Italian, and Latin. In July of 1891, he patented the Tesla coil and became a naturalized citizen of the United States. He experimented on wireless lighting, X-rays, radio remote control, wireless power, steam-powered oscillating generators, bladeless turbines, and participated in the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. So after doing all of this groundbreaking work for all these years, in 1915, a Reuters newspaper in London goes, "Nobel Prize in Physics is going to Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla." But Reuters in Stockholm is like, no, it's going to Sir William Henry Bragg and William Lawrence Bragg for their series in the analysis of crystal structure by means of X-rays. What the fuck are you talking about? And people were saying, I heard Tesla refused the prize. I heard Edison refused the prize. And the rumors got so bad, the Nobel Foundation actually has to come out and say point blank, any rumor that a person has not been given a Nobel Prize because he has made known his intention to refuse the reward is ridiculous. And only after the winner was announced could the recipient even decline the prize. Biographers speculate that Edison and Tesla were in fact the original recipients, but neither were given the award because they had so much beef against each other. In the years following the rumors, neither of them ever won the prize. Now, in 1922, Tesla moves into the St. Regis Hotel, where he started this lovely habit of moving to a new hotel every few years and leaving mountains of unpaid bills. Tesla never tied the knot, and said that celibacy allowed him to focus on his scientific abilities. Once he said that he considered women superior in every way, and he'd never be worthy of any of them. But as he got older and possibly more senile, he was pissy about women trying to outdo men and make themselves more dominant. He thought that women were sacrificing their femininity for power. In an interview with the Galveston Daily News on 10 August 1924, he stated, "In place of the soft-voiced, gentle woman of my reverent worship, has come the woman who thinks that her chief success in life lies in making herself as much as possible like man, in dress, voice, and actions, in sports and achievements of every kind. The tendency of women to push aside man, supplanting the old spirit of cooperation with him in all the affairs of life, is very disappointing to me." Until one day, he started walking to the park to feed the pigeons, which turned into feeding them at the window of his hotel room, and then bringing the injured ones in to nurse back to health. And that's when he met her, this beautiful, wounded white pigeon who would come to visit him daily. He spent over $2,000 on her, building a device that could comfortably support her so her bones could heal, while fixing her broken wing and leg. Tesla said of her, "I have been feeding pigeons, thousands of them for years, but there was one, a beautiful bird, pure white with light gray tips on its wings. That one was different. It was a female. I had only to wish and call her, and she would come flying to me. I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, there was a purpose to my life." In 1931, this writer who had been following Tesla for a while organized a 75th birthday party for the scientist. The party was a total rager, and Tesla ended up making it an annual thing. He'd buy and make a bunch of food and booze, invite the press to check out his inventions, tell stories about his past shenanigans, give them the business on current events, make odd, baffling claims, all the usual. At his 1932 soiree, he claimed he had invented a motor that would run on cosmic rays. In 1933, when he was 77, he stated he was on the verge of producing a new form of energy that completely contradicted Einstein's physics and would last 500 years. In 1934, he said he had designed a superweapon, the death ray. Then in 1937, he was making his regular trip to feed the pigeons at the cathedral and library when he was hit by a taxi. His back was totally jacked up and he broke 3 ribs. Because he refused to go to the fucking doctor, which was apparently his thing, the extent of his injuries are unknown, and he never totally recovered. In 1943, Tesla died alone in room 3327 in the New Yorker Hotel at the age of 86. His body was found by a maid who checked in on him after the Do Not Disturb sign had been on his door for a couple days. So the FBI is like, this guy had been saying some crazy-ass shit, like he was talking about death rays and like evil genius weapons. We need to get in there and see what's actually going on now that he's dead. So they get this professor at MIT who's an electrical engineer to help see what all the stuff actually was that Tesla had been building. And the guy spends 3 days with the FBI investigating all these amazing things Tesla had been working on. And they concluded that Tesla's thoughts and efforts during at least the past 15 years were primarily of a speculative, philosophical, and somewhat promotional character, often concerned with the production and wireless transmission of power, but did not include new, sound, workable principles or methods for realizing such results. Tesla was obsessed with and consumed with his work, but on the occasion he did choose to be social. Most people really liked him. Robert Underwood Johnson described him as having distinguished sweetness, sincerity, modesty, refinement, generosity, and force. His secretary, Dorothy Scarrett, wrote, "His genial smile and nobility of bearing always denoted the gentlemanly characteristics that were so ingrained in his soul." Tesla's friend, Julian Hawthorne, wrote, "Seldom did one meet a scientist or engineer who was also a poet, a philosopher, an appreciator of fine music, a linguist, and a connoisseur of food and drink." But Tesla could also be kind of a dick. He was disgusted by fat people and once fired a secretary for her weight. He was very consumed with appearances, once telling a subordinate to go home and change her dress because he didn't like it. When Thomas Edison died in 1931, Tesla told the New York Times, "He had no hobby, cared for no sort of amusement of any kind, and lived in utter disregard of the most elementary rules of hygiene. His method was inefficient in the extreme, for an immense ground had to be covered to get anything at all, unless blind chance intervened, and at first I was almost a sorry witness of his doings, knowing that just a little theory and calculation would have saved him 90% of the labor. But he had a veritable contempt for book learning and mathematical knowledge, trusting himself entirely to his inventor's instinct and practical American sense." But Tesla was in love with a bird. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or corrections for me, feel free to leave a comment or send a message to tawny@tawnyvoice.com. See you next Tuesday.
You don't have to be from Philadelphia to love the Twisted Philly podcast.
There's more mischief, mayhem, and nefarious goings-on in the city of brotherly love than Billy Penn could have ever imagined. We've got it all here on the Twisted Philly podcast.
Hi, I'm Dina Marie, the host of Twisted Philly. Join me every week for some of my favorite stories from the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection. We'll talk about true crime, haunted history, legends and local lore, plus some of my most favorite places to visit all around Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. You can follow me on social media, on Facebook at The Twisted Philly Podcast, and on Twitter at Twisted_Philly. And you can find my show on all major podcast apps. Plus, if you're a Patreon supporter, you get access to exclusive content twice a month that isn't available to other listeners. Join me every week in Twisted Philly.
This is Nathaniel Lloyd, host of Historical Blindness, the Odd Past podcast. Join us every 2 weeks as we explore the blind spots in our past, uncovering mysteries, exposing hoaxes, and shedding light on obscurities. For the past is a dark and mysterious continent, and looking back, we are but explorers searching for meaning. Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, and almost any podcast app. I hope you'll check out the show.
Hey there, mixers and hide and seekers. I'm Mixer Hyde, and I am the host of a podcast called In the Mix. Each week, I talk about culture and interview people making that culture, and oftentimes, those people are podcasters. I believe that everyone has a story to tell and a message to share, and I personally intend to hear as many of those as possible. So why don't you join me, and let's discover something. You can find In the Mix on Apple Podcasts or wherever